talk. I'm delighted to give an introduction to Heredity and to the special issue as well. So Heredity is the official journal of the Genetics Society, and the editor-in-chief for Heredity is Barbara Mabel at the University of Glasgow. So the remit of Heredity is really broad. It covers all sorts of topics related to genetics in all sorts of species. But one of the key things that is important for all papers in Heredity is that they should have some broad general lessons that really extend beyond a particular organism or a system of study. So listed here are some of the diverse topics that are particularly encouraged in Heredity, such as ecological genetics, applied genetics, and quantitative genetics, which we'll be talking about today. So one of the nice things about publishing in Heredity is that with it being a society journal, then the profits generated actually go straight back into the genetics research community. So for funding events like conferences and workshops. So here you can see there was a big centenary conference in Edinburgh in 2019 to celebrate 100 years of the Genetics Society. There's also workshops such as communicating your science workshops for students, and also grants as well that are funded. So for example, the Heredity Fieldwork Grant will enable students to undertake genetics research in the field. So another thing about Heredity as well, just to show you here, is that there's a really nice positive trajectory for the time it takes to publish. So here we've got a graph showing in recent years how the average time to send a paper out to review or to get the comments back from reviewers has been gradually decreasing. And what I would like to say about Heredity is that it has a really unique approach of having a dedicated editorial assistant. So Sandra is fantastic because by keeping in touch with the authors, the editors, and the reviewers throughout the publication process, it really makes publishing in Heredity a really personal process. So by having that personal touch, it just makes the whole publication process really smooth and efficient, which is really nice as well. We can also see that in recent years, there's been a really stable submission and acceptance rate. So just to give you an idea, then there's been about 300 submissions every month to Heredity, and there's a stable rate of 30 to 40% acceptance rate on those submissions as well. So one of my favorite things about Heredity as well is the fact that it doesn't just end with the publication, but Heredity does a really great job with actually communicating the results of the research to the broader community as well. So twice a month, there's the Heredity podcast, which is hosted and created by James Spurgeon. And this really gives fantastic interviews with the authors to give an idea of the story behind the science, which isn't really obvious from reading the formal published paper. And I should mention that the special issue that I'm going to be telling you about, Alison Bentley and I have just recorded a Heredity podcast on that, which should be out really soon as well. And in addition to these podcasts, there's also an opportunity for all of the authors publishing a paper in Heredity to write a much more informal article. So it's called Behind the Paper blogs, and that these get collated in the Nature Research, Ecology and Evolution connection. And you can see a couple of examples of those here. So it's just really great strategies really to make sure that it doesn't end with the paper, and that the results of the research can really reach a wider audience, which is really nice as well. I also think that Heredity is doing a fantastic job of encouraging and supporting the careers of early career researchers. So there's now an annual prize for the best student paper submitted for the journal every year as well, which really helps to raise the profile of early career researchers and the contributions that they've made. And these student-led papers are also features on the website and in the Heredity podcasts as well. So hopefully that gives you an overview of why Heredity is a great place to publish your work and gives you something to think about. And now what I'd like to do is to introduce the special issue, which Alison Bentley and I have produced, and it's now available on the Heredity website. It's Plant Quantitative Genetics from Theory into Practice. And this came about it with a special issue was launched at a conference that we held by the same name last November. in the University of Birmingham to really stimulate the collaboration between academics working in the field of plant quantitative genetics and the plant breeding industry as well. So this is the beautiful front cover that we've got. As I mentioned, Alison and I have produced a Heredity podcast, which will be out soon to tell you more about the overall scope and idea behind this special issue. But I just wanted to go through something complementary to that here, which is to just have a look at the individual papers one by one and tell you a little bit about those. So the first article in the special issue is this really thought-provoking review by Rex Bernardo, which takes us on the journey through the more than 100-year history of plant quantitative genetics, or quantitative genetics field in general. And it has this fantastic, enchanting title of Something Old, Something New, Something Borrowed, Something Blue. Blue being in a statistical sense here. So it really provides some food for thought as to maybe some older concepts that are not so relevant to modern day quantitative genetics as they perhaps might have been. Thinking about bringing in new concepts as well, including those that might be borrowed from other disciplines outside of biological sciences. So that really kicks off a set of reviews that we have in the special issue. So moving on to another set of reviews, there's a great review by Ali and Borrell looking at biofortification to improve the low mineral content in wheat, using a whole spectrum of modern genomics resources to do that. We also have a fantastic review from Jess Hiles, sort of addressing the challenges of how to adapt crops to changing climates. So it talks about the seasonal timing of the life cycle in the wheat, and how can we use that information to try and adapt this important food crop to the really diverse environments in which it's grown. And of course, at the bottom here, this one reflects the paper which Funmi has already given you an introduction to, and you'll get some more on that from Mike as well. So that's our collection of reviews. And then we also have in the special issue a really fantastic and quite unique type of article here. It's a perspective on engaging the next generation of plant geneticists with research and exposing them to careers in science, which we felt was a really important component of the special issue. So what this involves is in a secondary school in Jersey, the students were involved in the full scale of a research project, collaborating with academics, where they sequenced chloroplast genomes of daffodils in Jersey. And it really gave a fantastic boost to the students in terms of confidence in pursuing a scientific career, and really gave an excellent insight into what life as a scientist is actually like. So that was a really important part of what we were trying to do with the conference, and the special issue really is really try to appreciate the contribution and get more people involved in plant genetics for the future, so that this field can continue to flourish. And finally, we have a couple of lovely research articles. The first one here with this gorgeous picture of the blueberries is by Oliveira et al. And this paper explores how genomic prediction can be optimized. So how to design the study in a practical sense of resource allocation for sequencing, and what kind of training and test population setup to use, so that you can get the most out of genomic prediction and maximize accuracy of the predictions. And although blueberry is an important autotetraploid crop, this work also is relevant for anyone working on diploid crops as well. And finally, down the bottom here, we have the beautiful treescape here representing Richards et al. Study. So they looked at the genetic architecture of phenology traits in this deciduous tree populace, really addressing the really pressing need to understand how tree species are going to be able to respond to environmental change in the future, and the genetic basis of that. So as you can see, we've got a huge diversity of different kinds of articles and species study systems here. And as I mentioned earlier, like all heredity papers, they all have really broad implications for the field as a whole, rather than being specific to particular study systems. So I hope that tempts you to have a look at the special issue, which is available on the Heredity website now.